Digitally accessible. Digital accessibility simplified.
Hi, this is Juan Olarte from Digitally Accessible. Welcome to our Accessibility One-on-One podcast series. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Today, I would like to introduce you to Phil Yatvin, Senior Director of Business Development, and Ben Chargot, Project Coordinator of Digital Accessible Experience or DAX Consulting of the Chicago Lighthouse, an organization with over 100 years of experience serving patients, clients, and employees with visual loss. Both Phil and Ben will be doing a presentation in our Global Accessibility Awareness Day about why utilizing users with disabilities creates better digital experiences. The event will be May 19th, 2022 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the link is going to be down in the description. Phil and Ben, welcome, and we're so happy to have you as our presenters. So can you please tell us a bit more about you?
Sure. Thank you for introducing us, Juan. As Juan said, my name is Phil Yatvin. I'm Senior Director of Business Development at the Chicago Lighthouse. The Chicago Lighthouse is a 115-year-old social service organization located in the heart of Chicago's medical district. We provide about 40 different programs and services that empower individuals who are blind, visually impaired, disabled, and veterans. We do this through about 6 main categories: education, employment, low vision rehabilitation, assistive technology, independent living, and social enterprise. Our social enterprises are a very unique combination of mission and business where we create career pathways for professionals of our mission in revenue generating businesses that help us fund all of our social services, such as our Children's Development Center or our low vision clinics. We have a range of social enterprises that include an assembly plant that makes wall clocks, a call center service line that does medical scheduling as well as business operations. And then we also have DAX, or Digital Accessible Experience Consulting, which helps partners create digital properties such as websites, mobile apps, and platforms. I'll head it over to you, Ben.
All right, thanks, Phil, and thanks, Juan, for introducing us. Great to be here. So I will elaborate a little more on DAX. So as Phil said, it is the Digital Accessibility Experience Consulting. Basically, what we do is for our partners, we do a combination of manual and usability testing on their online platforms to make sure they are accessible not only to screen reader users and people with low vision, but also people who may have limited mobility and only use a keyboard for navigation, people with cognitive impairments, making sure the language of the site isn't unnecessarily complicated and easy for everyone to understand. We check a lot of things like contrast, zoom functions for people who are low vision, and a lot of what we do is testing for screen reader functionality as well. I am a native JAWS user. That's one of the screen readers that we test for and that I use to perform my daily functions. I have used JAWS for probably 20 years now, and it's a part of my daily life, and it's a part of all our other testers are also native screen reader users, and they use that in their jobs as well and to perform life tasks and anything like that. So they're very comfortable with it and know how it operates. And by doing that, we kind of have an edge on the testing that you don't see from automated testing, that you would only really get from usability testing from actual users of the products. So DAX is not as old as the organization itself. We've only been operating for a few years now, but we're seeing some major growth, and the accessibility is on web platforms is just continuing to be taken more seriously and examined from a lot of different angles. So we only see that expanding in the future.
Excellent, Ben. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that great description description of that. So Ben, if I can ask you something else, why is it important to have accessible and user-friendly digital spaces?
Well, again, there are a lot of angles to that. The most important, I guess, and the most obvious would be that it's just the right thing to do, in the same sense that it's just the right thing to do to have a wheelchair ramp in addition to stairs, or an elevator available, to move between floors of a building. Having several ways to navigate a digital space or a website comes from the same place as that, so that all users can access all portions of it. And as you would be able to interact with a physical space, also being able to do that with digital spaces. And so there are building codes that say, there has to be a ramp here, there has to be an automatic door here, or something like that. And now we are seeing that equivalent in digital accessibility criteria through WCAG, the 2.0 and 2.1 criteria that have been published, as well as the 508 compliance from the ADA. So just from a societal standpoint, it's the right thing to do. From a business standpoint, it means significantly more customers. It means more traffic to your site. It means opening yourself up to a wider audience that may not have been accessible before, simply because they couldn't use the platform, not because they're not interested. And then from a third angle, it not having an accessible space could result in legal action. And so avoiding that is also a major incentive.
Phil, I have a question for you. Why is digital inclusion and why is it important?
So accessibility that Ben was just talking about is actually just part of what digital inclusion is. DAX especially, and most accessibility experts in the industry see digital inclusion as having two separate sides to it. There's accessibility and there's usability. And while there's some overlap, they are very different. Accessibility goes more with compliance and standards, the WCAG Section 508, the ADA, and obviously there are other standards across the globe, but accessibility is how and the different ways that people with disabilities that use assistive technology could interact with a digital platform. Whereas usability is more of that user experience side. There's potential where some things can be accessible, but if the user experience is still pretty poor, you're going to lose customers, or people are not going to be satisfied with that experience. So digital inclusion is the umbrella that goes over both of them. And digital inclusion is important to understand, not just for users of assistive technology, but for users that don't use assistive technology, because it is inclusion. That is the main word there. And organizations and companies, whether you're trying to reach customers with disabilities or whether you're trying to employ great employees with disabilities, inclusion is the main word there. How do you create inclusive environments, whether that's physical or digital, to make it so that people can collaborate better, be more productive, allow you to, as I said, reach more customers? Digital inclusion is so important these days, and we can see that there's such a larger focus on it, and so much more research coming out to say companies that are more inclusive, especially in the digital space, are seeing more returns on their investment into accessibility, usability, and overall digital inclusion.
That's great, Phil. Thank you. Let me ask you something else. Right now, in the experience that you have with your clients, do you see the adoption of digital inclusion a checkpoint for them, or is that something they really want to do to increase people with disabilities accessing their services or products?
So I would say, Juan, our partners and clients are all over the place when it comes to digital inclusion. As Ben mentioned earlier, there are your proactive partners and there are your reactive partners. Reactive partners dealing with lawsuits typically are more focused on how to do checkboxes to make sure they don't find another lawsuit. Then you have the more proactive partners that are looking at how to make digital inclusion and accessibility part of their overall strategies. How can they, it's just like HR or accounting. how can accessibility be layered in throughout the organization? And those are the companies that we love to work with, especially in what we call an inclusive design fashion, because working hand in hand with our team of specialists that have disabilities, we're able to bring greater awareness to accessibility best practices, demonstrate what real assistive tech users experience. We pass along that empathy that is really necessary for our partners to start to build digital inclusion into their own practices and processes. But I would going to be honest with you, most are more on the reactive side. Or what are the simplest checkboxes that we can put in to make sure that we can reach some more customers? But others are so far above and beyond. And it's not just how can we reach more customers, how can we hire more people? And those are the ones, as I said, that we really love working with, because those will be, it's digital inclusion is becoming a competitive advantage in this space these days. And the better your organization can become at doing it internally or having a really good partner to help them do it, they're seeing more advantages, especially on the business side and bottom line, than others.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I really like the word empathy, and I completely agree with that. Ben, let me just go back to you for a
Sure.
moment. In my experience, accessibility and usability are terms that overlap. You can have something that's usable but not accessible, and something that is accessible but not usable. However, some organizations see both disciplines as one. Can you tell us why it's important to understand the difference between the two of them, and how can they work together?
Absolutely. Thanks, Juan. So to answer part of your question first, it's important to understand the difference between them because you're really looking at two different, they do overlap, absolutely, but you are looking at two different experiences there. As Phil said, accessibility is more the criteria and numbers side of things, whereas whereas usability is more the human side of things, how people actually interact with these things. You can see you can see statistics all day long that say if a website is accessible or not, but um, in the end, if the user experience is clunky, or if there are things that don't interact as expected as they do maybe with other elements that you interact with a screen reader or other assistive tech, then it's still not going to be a good user experience. So the example I always use is with images and other non-text elements. It's become common practice to add alt text to those, that is presented to screen reader users and such, telling you what the image is, telling you what the element is, what the function of it is, and giving some relevant information. Um, Accessibility, running like an accessibility scan, for instance, may come back as there is alt text there, and therefore it's accessible. But if you're actually testing it from the user side of things, the usability side and the user experience, you may discover that that alt text is a string of unintelligible HTML code, or it might say alt text.
Mhm.
There's really no telling, and so that's why they're both important to include together in projects to realize the difference, but also realize how they work together. Because doing one and not the other, you really might miss out on. You might either miss out on the criteria that could be met to ensure that the space is more accessible, or you could miss out on the user experience side of things, where it's technically accessible, but the user experience is not there. And either one is a step in the right direction, but really when you put them both together, that's where we can really come together in the digital inclusion.
Excellent. I really like that answer. I really like your example as well. I've seen it many times where companies or people within organizations, they say a specific image, it needs to have an alternative text so it's accessible, but they don't look at the context. Is the image decorative or not? All they want to do is really have that check mark to say, oh, it is accessible. They just don't know how it's going to be accessible or if it requires for it to be a descriptive image or something like that. It actually brings me to my next question, Ben. because a lot of the times what they want to do is utilize automated tools to try to check that portion for accessibility, and perhaps that a tool like that, you may say your specific image has alternative text, but it may not be what that requires to have. So can you please tell me a little bit on some of the misconceptions you found your clients to have in terms of automated tools?
Absolutely, and that's another great question. We do run into this particular one quite a lot because there are a lot of automated accessibility scans and things. Companies that are marketing that where it's kind of a an add-on to your site where you can kind of have it do and it scans all the time. So it's always looking for these new issues, and I can see why it would be very attractive to people because it's cheaper usually and it's kind of like it seems like it would be a guardian that's there all the time, kind of constantly ensuring accessibility. And
Yeah.
while that may be the case for some issues that it discovers, kind of going back to the alt text that I mentioned before, um, something like that would not get picked up in an accessibility scan. Um, Whereas it would come across as as not an issue, but if you tested it as a screen reader user, you'd realize that there is alt text there, but it isn't associated at all with the image, or or the text is unintelligible. And also, Juan, like you mentioned, the images that are decorative. It's pretty common practice to just not even make those perceivable to assistive technology
Hmm.
because there's no reason to have extraneous navigation to even interact with those images because they don't really have a function. They're not a link, they're not a button, and they're not a graphic that provides any relevant information. So again, an accessibility scan would not realize that sort of thing. And yeah, on the flip side, it would probably peg that as something that's an accessibility issue with no alt text. Whereas if you're testing it as a user doing usability testing, you realize that is a purely decorative image, and that really the remediation effort does not need to be put in to make it accessible because it should really just be hidden from the assistive technology. Um, and another thing that I would add is a lot of the times the accessibility scanners and the automated testing, what they also do is they create excuse me, sort of a screen reader version for the site. You might see that on a lot of websites where it says, click here for the accessible version,
Yes.
or using a screen reader, click here, which is it's better than not having that option, certainly, but it's inherently discriminatory having an option like that because what it does is it's basically it's here's the regular site, and then here's the one that you as a screen reader user should use. It divides us further. It makes it so and you're not sure if you're getting the full content from that site. You're not sure if you're maybe using like a mobile version that doesn't have all the functionality, and in the end, it's just it's not a good practice to have a separate site for accessibility users. For all those reasons, it's really better for everyone involved if accessibility and usability are built um, into the proprietary site, and it's not only better for accessibility users, it really ends up better for everyone in
Hmm.
the end because if it's more navigable by screen reader, odds are it's also easier to navigate visually. Um, if there are elements that that interact better with zooming functions, odds are they're easier to see anyway, even if you don't need a zoom function. Odds are it just makes the page more accessible and user friendly for everyone, not just accessibility users. And then if we can all use the same web page at the same time in that process, why not? That's really the ideal situation, to not divide anybody and to just have everyone be able to interact with the same space in the same way. And and have it be usable for everyone.
100% agree with that. I completely understand not needing to have two separate websites. And sometimes organizations, they do want to go that way just to say, oh, we need to have something compliant. This is what we're going to do versus actually let's try to integrate accessibility early on within the development life cycle so we can think of all the different users and their needs and ensure that we provide something accessible. And you touch in a very specific point and something I really like is why we actually have to utilize manual testing or people utilizing assistive technologies, not to solely rely on automated testing. And in my opinion, automated testing is only going to give you anywhere between 25 to 35% of all accessibility issues, and therefore you need automated manual functional testing. Can you also tell me a little bit more in terms of the experience as to why it's really important to ensure that automation is not the only way of actually doing testing, but you have to talk about or you have to look into the WCAG success criteria, but also ensuring that it's relevant or usable by people with disabilities. In this case, what you guys do, and I think is fantastic.
Well, thanks very much. We tend to think it's fantastic too, and I absolutely agree that you do need to consider all of those platforms and testing environments. We do actually, we do use automated testing to get kind of a baseline
Hmm.
on these projects because it's not, it's not an evil tool or anything like that. It just doesn't cover all of the bases that you need to cover, but it still can be a tool in your toolbox, just not the only one. So as you were saying, Juan, it's important to use all of these methods because they all catch different things. So an automated test may catch contrast issues, or zooming functions, or like a language of page. Maybe if the language of the page isn't specified in the HTML markup, you may find that is detected more easily by an automated test than by user test, where a very specific issue would be the only way of finding that during manual testing. But because the automated tests can scan all of the code from the site, every page, every function on every page, oftentimes that's outside of the scope of manual testing. But running an automated test first, it gives our testers more of an idea of what they might need to focus on, certain workflows that are more important than others, things that we might discover through the automated test that then we need to go back and more thoroughly manually test for accessibility and usability. So again, it's still a good tool to have and to use, and we use it ourselves. Um, then the manual testing with the WCAG criteria, that's a different kind of important because it fosters understanding of these criteria. They were put in place for exactly that purpose, to be used as kind of a definite benchmark to test every site, every online platform against equally. It's a very it's a standardized set of rules and regulations, and honestly, that's the only way to make sure that we do have kind of standardized accessibility and know what's expected out of each platform for each user, is to have these criteria and kind of these set expectations, because everybody's idea of and that moves me on to the third, which is again usability.
Hmm.
Everyone has their own idea of what makes a usable experience. Everyone, there's several different ways to interact through screen reader. There's several different ways to interact if you're a keyboard only user, or like a switch control user for people with limited mobility. There are several different ways within those products to interact with them and to interact with the spaces, with the digital spaces. So then usability keeps all of those in mind as well, the individual user experience. So that's why all three are important in their own right, but definitely have different have different levels that they should be tested on. I would add that several different environments also are important to include in the testing environment. What I mean by that is to test, say, JAWS is a screen reader, NVDA is another very popular screen reader. To test, say, JAWS and Chrome as a browser, or NVDA and Firefox as a browser. There's several different combinations that we can use as different testing environments, and determining which of those are most used by accessibility users, determining which ones of those are meant to properly interact with the digital space.
Hmm.
Those are other important determinations to make, whether you want it tested on Mac or Chromebook with Chromevox, Mac with VoiceOver, that would be, or even mobile testing, which we've done for a few platforms now. If you want it tested on iOS or Android, really considering those testing environments too, and what you think or what the owner of the digital space thinks would be the most viable platforms and the most used by their potential visitors.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then I just want to bring back to Phil. Phil, if you can actually let us know why it's important to have users with disabilities be part of the design and development process.
Sure. Having users involved in the design and development process, something we like to call, and most people do, inclusive design. Also, the concept of shifting left is a critical strategy in accessibility and usability development. So imagine you take the time to develop your whole website and then you go get it tested. Well, if you don't have your own internal team that has accessibility knowledge, you might be paying significantly more to have your entire site gone through. What if there are a lot of accessibility, compliance, or usability issues found? Most likely both if you haven't been considering digital inclusion during the development process. You're spending a lot more time and money to then go create a compliant, usable digital environment. When you build in accessibility and usability during the process, you save both time and money, and your end product usually is much better when it comes to digital inclusion. I mean, you can start with digital inclusion practices all the way at the wireframing level. Have someone in of course, not all wireframe softwares are accessible to users with assistive technology, and that's one of the areas we're working on partnerships in. But you can have someone, a designer, walk through a wireframe, say, well, we're thinking about having some buttons here, or, these are some different titles and headings we're going to have. And our team then, and digital or accessibility specialists can go through with your team and help you figure out, okay, well, make sure you note that this is the heading structure you should have if that's the content you want to have. Or, oh, make sure that you're naming those buttons or images or links the correct way. Or if you're going to have a carousel there in your wireframe, definitely make sure you can pause it. Things like that go along with WCAG criteria, you can take care of in the wireframe stage so that when you're developing it, there's less time that will be taken in the first prototype or your MVP of then going and doing some manual testing. You'll be saving time and energy because inclusion is built in all along. When organizations need to partner with organizations like ours, DAX, building us in the inclusive design process also allows for, as I showed earlier, not only accessibility best practice, but also empathy to be learned from internal IT teams. And that empathy comes from seeing how real assistive technology users use technology to experience your web platform or your mobile app. Being able to experience this firsthand will build that skill set into your internal IT team so that as technology changes, which certainly happens these days, your team will be prepared to continue to iterate and build inclusion as you move forward to create, that way accessibility and digital inclusion becomes a sustainable strategy for your organization. That doesn't happen if you wait after the cake is fully baked and try to do accessibility testing afterwards.
100% agree with that. So many times organizations don't think that early on in the development life cycle, and they don't really understand that, oh, by introducing accessibility at the testing level, they're actually increasing either the money they're going to have to spend in the project or the time frame for the delivery, especially if that specific website or project has some kind of legislative type of requirements. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I have a question for both of you. What will be what will be your great accessibility wish, or if you had a magic wand, what would you do with it?
Ben, do you want to go first?
If you have
Probably.
a ready-made answer, go for it, Phil.
Yeah.
Sure. It's so much. I'm somewhat new to digital inclusion accessibility. I got into the space about 2.5 years ago. A lot of that came from having coworkers who were screen reader users or screen mag users. But I have a lifetime experience of working with people with cognitive disabilities. So I have some reference to making schoolwork and textbooks accessible and whatnot. But so much I think about my passion for the industry comes from that real firsthand live experience of seeing people I care for, seeing coworkers struggle with inaccessible products. So, my one biggest wish in the accessibility space is just for everyone, if I could just have everyone have that awareness, have that empathy that is required to understand digital inclusion, it goes such a long way. When we have first discovery meetings with potential partners and we show them what their website is experienced like through someone who uses a screen reader, people just get it. They not automatically understand all of it, but their attitude and their thoughts about accessibility and how it should be prioritized changes when they really can see what real users experience. And I understand, yes, you can YouTube some of those videos, but until you see it firsthand, or you're trying to collaborate with someone on your team that you need to make sure you're sending an accessible PowerPoint to, or using a collaborative messaging tool, you sometimes don't pick up on those things or how important digital inclusion really is. So my magic wand wish would be that everyone can have that empathy and awareness of the importance of digital inclusion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ben?
And I guess I would say, I mean, speaking in like biggest picture, I guess I would make it not necessary. I would just take away, if the magic wand was that powerful, I would just take away all the disabilities so it wasn't necessary. Or I should say, I would take away the societal problems that cause disability for the most part.
Hmm.
Um, but let's pretend that's not, we're not speaking in that big. We're speaking more about accessibility in general. I would say I would wave that wand and make it not so cost prohibitive, because a lot of this is so expensive. A lot of companies, um, that is where that's where their enthusiasm for accessibility and usability stops, is when they realize how much it costs to remediate.
Hmm.
And it is it takes a lot of work, and and people need to be paid for their work, and paid what they deserve and what they're worth for that work. So um, the cost does go up, and it does, and that can be prohibitive for some businesses that want to that really want to have these accessible products, but can't quite afford it, because maybe they're a startup, um, maybe they're just not turning a lot of profit. Maybe they are looking for more customers but can't find them due to the accessibility issue. But then they don't have enough capital to fix it as well. So there's a lot of, and at the flip side, we can't be doing this for free either, or
Hmm.
for peanuts. We have to earn our keep here as well, and keep the lights on, so to speak. So it's a money drives a lot of it, and that could be said for so many parts of the world. But it's definitely relevant here as well, and evident in a lot of the assistive technology is very expensive as well. For a full professional JAWS license, we're talking over $1,000. And Braille displays and things like that are very expensive. As you get more specialized keyboards for people with motor control issues and things like that, those get more expensive. Anything like that, really, it costs so much more because it's supply and demand. It's like you there's not as much demand for it. And a lot of these are very complicated pieces of technology, so it's going to cost more, of course, just because of production, and because in comparison with other products being purchased, it's a small customer base, and there's no real getting around that. So that would be my magic trick there, is to make everything affordable and make it not cost prohibitive. But Phil wins with the empathy for sure.
You actually, Ben, both of you guys brought really good points, but Ben, I just want to go back a little bit in terms of the cost that entails trying to make something accessible, and this is why we always try to ensure accessibility is introduced early on within the development life cycle to mitigate some of those costs and extra time. But one of the things I wanted to go back and try to sort of piggyback in terms of your answer, in terms of the cost. While it is expensive, I see a lot of times organizations trying to use silver bullet when it comes to overlays, and they do not understand what are overlays and how is that they are promising to fix a website but not really doing it. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts in terms of overlays, especially since you're a native screen reader and you work with other people that use screen readers. I just wanted to get your point of view on that.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the overlays. That kind of goes along with the automated testing
Mhm.
and the separate versions of websites that we were talking about earlier. Overlays can only do so much, and I understand that they may be more of a cost-effective solution, as well as using only automated testing would be. Because when you get, the more people you have involved, the more it's probably going to cost, because you have to pay everyone for their time.
Correct.
So yes, I think that overlays solve some issues, but they also create some issues that might not be there otherwise. In trying to make the site more accessible and more user friendly, sometimes they actually do the opposite. Because it's a program trying to do this, and they can't catch everything. So you may find that an overlay fixes an issue with with some checkboxes, but then um, it may create another issue where the go to checkout button moves off screen when you navigate to it, when you're zoomed in. Or it may create an issue where lots of websites contain these navigational links, skip to content, um, and the heading structure, so you can jump to different parts of the page very easily with assistive technology. A lot of the overlays kind of disable those functions that would work on the original website. Once the
Mhm.
overlay is activated, a lot of the time those sort of things don't work anymore, and it's not something that's coded in there on purpose. They're trying to do the exact opposite, but because it's a program, and because there's no user in there behind it, saying this works, this doesn't, oftentimes it creates more problems than it solves.
Completely agree with that. With that, I really want to thank you both, Phil and Ben, for being part of our one-on-one accessibility talk. I really thank you, and then I'm looking forward to your presentation.
And thank you, Juan.